Hello, this is Harry Rozenberg here in Jerusalem, Israel. I have the honor today of sitting with Dr. Gerald Schroeder. I requested he sit together with me because we have this course that we're giving and lectures that we're giving on the biblical prophecy and the lost tribes of Israel. And before we really go into this topic, I would like to stress and make sure that everyone realizes this is not a metaphysical and spiritual story, but it's actually somewhat rooted and grounded in the sciences. And Dr. Schroeder, if you don't mind to introduce yourself and a little bit about your history.
Okay, first, it's a pleasure to be sitting here with you in the holy city of Jerusalem. My background is both in science and in Bible. In the sciences, I am fortunate to have gone to MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I got my bachelor's, my master's, my PhD, all there. I was on the staff of the physics department for about 5 years before moving to Israel, where I met my wife. I joined the Weizmann Institute of Science and also the Hebrew University. For the last several years, last 2 decades in fact, I've been teaching this integration between, I would say, Bible, Torah, the 5 books of the Bible, and science, to show that it's not conflict, it's confluence. So for that, I'm fortunate, thank God, to have the science behind me, and also to study Torah in the Hebrew, Torah being the 5 books of Moses, and seeing that the Hebrew has sometimes subtleties that in an English translation might look like it's a conflict, but it turns out to be, in fact, confluence. And in that work, I have to make very clear that I only use ancient biblical commentary. If I'm looking for a level of understanding a word, I don't want to bend the Bible to match the science or bend the science. So for the science, it's science, that's published peer-reviewed data. For the Bible, I only use ancient commentary if I want to go below the surface, because all modern commentators have heard of dinosaurs and the Hubble telescope, and it's too much of an attempt to bend the science to match this Bible, or bend the Bible to match the science. You don't have to bend, they match.
Right. I'd like to segue a little bit into that. There was a commentator, the Vilna Gaon, Rabbi Eliyahu Kramer, who lived hundreds of years ago. He was one of the greater beacons of sages that we've had in Torah transmission for 2,000 years. He stated that in the future, in this great future that's ahead of us, the sciences and the spirituality are going to merge and become one. They're not going to contradict each other. When you say something, you'll be saying the same thing from the scientific perspective and then from the spiritual perspective. So when I heard about your works, and I've read your books, it would tremendously influence my family, I saw that as a manifestation of this legend that we've been passing along for hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, that the two wouldn't contradict each other in the future.
Because there's one author for both of them.
Right.
There's one author, the creator of the universe, we have the Bible. The creator of the universe, we have nature.
Right.
And so the idea that there be a conflict is almost nonsensical, because they're both telling the same story. The way I see it is, it's 2 views of one reality, 2 views from very different perspectives, but on one reality.
It's very cool. So from my angle, where I'm coming from is, I got excited about biblical prophecy at a younger age. I grew up in New York City. I had a regular New York City childhood, no different than any other New York human, I don't know what to say. And it hit me around when I was a teenager, 20, that, hey, there's something going on. There's Israel. There's people returning to Israel from all over the world. These were things that were spoken about for 2,000 years, are unfolding before our eyes. So I got very excited about it, and I dove headfirst into the whole subject. And I'm uncovering more and more. But what we've noticed now is that there's hundreds of millions of people around the world who are actually identifying as being from the seed, the descendants of the ancient Israelites that's scattered around the world. We know that there's such a thing called a Jew and the Jewish people, but we also know that that was a small remnant of an ancient people. So now that we have all these people around the world looking to return, come back, and play a role, these are actually manifestations of prophecy. So when I say the word prophecy, there's a big stigma onto it. So someone's going to be, there's a percentage of the people alive today, when I say prophecy, they're going to look the other way and say, this is a hocus pocus, ancient magic legend. They don't relate to that word. So this interview right now, or this conversation, I really want to stress how serious it is that we are not speaking in terms of something outside of the laws of nature. Our narrative is very grounded in the rules of reality. And I had read your works, and the first thing people say is, okay, you have this prophecy, you have this people that started 5,700 something years ago. no, that's not possible. We see the world is much older. And so you really caught my attention when you said, not you said, you repeated what was told, but you've woven it together nicely with science, that yes, the date that we have today, according from the scientific perspective of how old the world is, actually could potentially match up with the biblical creation narrative. Is that correct?
Yeah, I understand it, and also the idea of adding up all the generations. First of all, the Bible gives us the ages of people, from Adam forward. Why do I care that Adam lived 130 years, had a kid named Seth? It's chapter 5 of the book of Genesis. Or Seth lives such and has. Why do I need those numbers? Those numbers tell us that the author of the Bible wants a calendar. So we add all those ages up because they're all given. You come to the end of the Hebrew Bible, you had kings, queens, kaisers, whatever they are, presidents. You get to a number less than 6,000 years. But that number dates back not to the creation of the universe, to the creation of the soul of Adam. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. The biblical calendar that you get in your Jewish calendar, from the butcher or the synagogue, it's always very interesting that it's either from the butcher or the funeral home. It tells you something about diet there, I think.
That's very funny.
In any event, that number, as we're making it right now, is 5777. That number doesn't date back to the creation of the universe. It dates back to the creation of the soul of Adam. This in the Hebrew, the word is a neshama. The soul of this human soul, was put into the world at about that time. The world changed. And what's amazing, to me, flabbergasting in fact, my wife Barbara Sofer, great writer, wonderful person, we were giving lectures back to back in London, had half of a day off. We went to the British Museum, another science museum, British Museum, and there, 1 or 2 flights up, is an entire wing that devotes to the change in society that corresponded, and they give a date, and that date corresponds with the biblical understanding of a change. The neshama, the soul, changed the world. Before the soul came into the world, there were Homo sapiens sapiens. The Maimonides in his book, The Guide for the Perplexed, that's the year 1190, talks about these beings that had the same shape and intelligence. Same shape and intelligence as humans, but they weren't humans. Why weren't they humans? We would call them Homo sapiens sapiens. They weren't Neanderthals. Neanderthals don't have our shape. They have a low forehead. The same shape and same intelligence. He even talks about having, I don't make it racy, but he talks about having sexual relationships. They were Homo sapiens sapiens, but they weren't humans, as he points out. And that comes from the Talmud 2,000 years ago, which talks about in a section called Eruvim, boundaries, that these beings existed. They were across the board totally human in intelligence and in shape, high forehead, but they weren't human. So the idea that Homo sapiens sapiens go back more than 6,000 years is zero problem from a Bible point of view. And these are commentaries long before people were digging up the fossils. You say, I better put that in my book. Look, this goes back 2,000 years for the Talmud and the Guide for the Perplexed, which people can find in about 20 different languages. It was originally written in Arabic, again by Maimonides, the year 1190, so way before. If this was known, the change that took place, according to the British Museum, was a social change. Dates at the first cities, writing, all these things were invented, trading. So as it says in Psalm 85, the truth shall spring from the earth. We understand now that these beings existed. That's recent knowledge. And so the museum devotes an entire wing to that. This change in society. It doesn't mention Bible, and when I spoke with the curator about this and discussed this for easily half an hour. The curator's entire exhibit, I never mentioned Bible, Adam, soul, neshama, nothing. Just what made the change. Why? And he said, we're not really sure, because the change should have happened almost 10,000 years ago, because when farming was invented. These Homo sapiens sapiens, that's brain work, but it wasn't soul work. And the change was the first large cities. And he says, we don't understand why it took so long for cities to come, because there was already population. Once you have farming, your sedentary, so you can have big families. The change was the neshama.
So it's really interesting. Two things. So now you're saying is when I'm talking to someone and I say, okay, we have this atom that happened 5,770 years ago, 577 years ago, and he says to me, no, we're finding things, humans or human structures, but way before that. So it can't be. We're not saying the same thing. But according to this theory, there's no contradiction here. The two can flow very nicely.
Well, wait, it's not a theory. The scientific discoveries are
correct.
scientific discoveries. The statement in the Bible is a statement. So it's
The two
two
can
sets
mesh
of facts.
very well, though.
The founder, I teach at a school called Eshet Torah, the fire of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And the founder, Noah Weinberg of Blessed Mary, a brilliant human being, said, if you have any discussion, the first thing you have to do is define your terms. When I go to the museum and I see people going back 70, 80,000 years, people that look exactly like models of people, and I see these people inventing tools 50,000 years ago, inventing farming 10,000 years ago. The museum, the anthropology textbook that talks about it, the anthropology teacher that talks about it, is 100% correct by their definition of a person. Because their definition of a person is a being that looks like you and looks like me, has your brains and my brains. According to the Bible, according to the ancient commentators, they go back 90,000, no, not a problem. But the Bible defines a person almost the same. It's a being that looks like you, looks like me, has your brains and my brains, and has the soul of humanity, the neshama, the whole soul of humanity. And that goes back less than 6,000 years. And the museum, the secular museum that is so important, certainly the most important museum for this part of the world, dates, gives you a date on the plaque on the wall. There is a date. It doesn't like say, I'm not reading into it, it's written right there on the wall. So it doesn't say 5770, it rounds it off at 5,500 years ago. I mean,
It's mind-blowing.
Truly. It sounds silly to say, but I really almost started to weep when I saw that. I mean, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling.
Spiritually emotional. This
Yeah.
whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm with you on that. And so we have this whole thing that we can align everything. But now we have this time period before Adam, and however long the scientists say, I don't know, maybe billions of years, whatever it was. But you've also come to an understanding of how those 6-day period prior to Adam, according to the Bible, actually, according to some time relativity, could have spanned that amount of time that scientists speculate how old the world is today. Is that correct?
Almost. It's not relativity. It's all astronomy.
I'm learning still,
It's astronomy 101.
Yeah.
When I'm giving a class, if I have a person that's taken AP, advanced placement in astronomy, I can sit down. He can answer. He can once I show him the direction. The Bible has two parts of a calendar. That's why the age of the universe in that biblical calendar says the time from Adam. Okay, the first Homo sapiens sapien with the neshama. But then we have these 6 days before it. Now, what's interesting, all ancient commentary, with no exception that I've studied, now I don't pretend I've studied all the commentary, but all the study I've studied, tells us those days are 24 hours each. Sometimes people say, oh, they were long periods of time. I call that the baby answer. All of ancient commentary, like the famous one, Rashi, the year 1090, says the word day in Genesis chapter 1 means 24 hours. Nachmanides, the major Kabbalah is the deeper meaning. It's not mysticism. The year about 1,200, 800 years ago, before people are digging up fossils, realize, said the days are days, 24 hours each, but more than that, like the 6 days of our work week. All ancient commentary locks it in. Those days are 24 hours each. Why would I think differently? The text says day, yom. The Hebrew word for day is yom, and it says day. But then he points out the subtlety in the text. Again, I get like goose pimples. My kids sometimes saying, Abba, Daddy, your hair's standing up on end. I have less hair than you have by a lot, but it's amazing. He says, why does the Bible number the days in a sequence that is not consistent? There are 6 days, and at the end of each day there is the English translation. It's defective, but the English, there's evening, there's morning, and then the day is numbered, like in the end of Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. There's evening and morning, day 1. Now the next day, a few verses later, says there's evening and morning, a second day. And more things happen, evening, morning, a third day, a fourth day, a fifth day, the sixth day. He asks the question almost 1,000 years ago, why does the Bible say day 1? It says second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth. Why doesn't it say a first day? Because Hebrew knows the word first. Biblical Hebrew knows the word first, but it says day 1. And he gives the answer. because the Torah for the 6 days of Genesis doesn't see time from looking back, as our perspective. It sees time from looking forward from the beginning. And he writes it very clearly. He says, the Torah could not write a first day on the first day, because from its perspective, from the beginning, there hadn't been a second day. And we all know it's the case. During the world wars, no one, except the pessimists, but no one called the First World War the First World War. It was the Great War, the big war, that war, to end all wars. But came the next war, and suddenly that Great War became the First World War. I don't know if I should mention it on the video here, but I fought in the First Lebanese War.
Yeah.
Okay? And none of us fighting in the First Lebanese War, including my 4 buddies that didn't come back from the war, we never called it we're fighting in the First World War, First Lebanese War. We're fighting in Lebanon for our safety of our families and our home in Israel. So why do I have to say the First Lebanese War? Because sadly there's been a second Lebanese War, but no one called it the first during that first war. The Torah writes, and verse number 5 of Genesis, the first chapter, the creation chapter, there's evening and one day, and doesn't write there was a first day, because the Bible sees time before the second day. The Bible sees time from the beginning looking forward. Why that should interest an author 3,500 years ago for the Bible, or 1,000 years ago for Nachmanides and Rashi, why should that matter? See time from Timbuktu, from Canarsie. Time is time. No, it's not true. Your perception of time is totally related to how you're perceiving the events. It's not relativity, it's straight astronomy. We measure the universe to be a bit under 14 billion years old. About 13.8. The numbers change, but it's about a bit under 14 billion years old. Go anywhere else in the universe and make that measurement by looking at radiations coming, you get a different number. Could be a tiny bit different or a huge difference. Our number is 14 billion years old. There were dinosaurs as we measure time, and on our Earth, we live Earth time. Earth time, measurement of the universe, that the dinosaurs disappeared 65 million years ago. Those years went by. The dinosaurs first appeared about 320 million years ago, mammals, etc., going on. The Earth forms about 4.6 billion years ago, and then going back in the universe to 14 billion years. That's how we measure time. We measure the age of the universe by looking at light coming in from deep space, and light has a wave aspect. By looking at characteristics of the wave, we may get the number 14 billion years. The Torah sees time from the beginning looking forward. We don't live biblical time. We live Earth time, and the universe is 14 billion years old, and there were dinosaurs 65 and those million years, and they really disappeared then. And those are real years. But how would those years be perceived? And here is the key perception. Perception is the key word. How would they be perceived from biblical time? We don't live biblical time. We live Earth time. But the Bible sees time from the beginning looking forward. We look back. Those years went by. But how would they be measured, perceived from a totally different perspective? The beginning looking forward. It's totally a thought experiment. When I took the numbers, that I was led, pardon me for doing, but led by the nose by Nachmanides. Why is it day one? It wasn't my idea. But I thank God, as my late friend Arnie Novak, who died of cancer about 8 or 9 years ago, wonderful man, he said, this is the first time in history that humans have the data to understand what the difference would be between looking back and looking forward. And so I just lucked out. I live at this time. You say blessed, whatever you want to say about it. It's not like to say lucky, because it's all, who knows how, I don't want to get too much into metaphysics, but you take the numbers of the expansion of the universe, it has nothing to do with relativity, it's pure astronomy. From, as Nachmanides points, that the clock begins when matter forms. And he talks about the first creation being, we would say today's language, energy, energia. Hebrew doesn't even have a word for that. Something so thin it wasn't solid, but then it condensed into solid. The first stable matter is protons, okay? Because a proton determines what the matter is. If I say 1 proton, I'm saying hydrogen. If I say 2 protons, I'm saying helium. If I take 6 protons, I'm saying carbon, 8 protons. So protons define the matter. He says that's when the clock begins. He doesn't mention protons. He just writes, for the Hebrew speakers to hear this, Mishia Yeshit Fos Bosman. He writes, time is created, Hasman Nazvar, time is created, but he says, only when matter forms does time grab a hold. That's interesting because that's literally true. There are too many nuances in the physics here. But if I take the universe viewing from this view, I take my 14 billion years and I project it back. It's totally a thought experiment. The universe is expanding. What we discover is the perception of time contracts exactly as you go back in time by compression. It's frightening, but when you put these numbers into, look, there's physics involved, into the most common equation that we have in the universe, A equals A0 e to the minus lambda t, okay? I'm not gonna, okay, but you plug those numbers in of the rate of, the amount of expansion, it's crazy.
And the two align, so you're saying...
You get 6 days.
Yeah.
You get 6 days. And I have no control. I have no control over those numbers. It's not like, well, I'll choose this number, but not that number. Those are science numbers.
So this is somewhat of a formula from looking back, we get 6...
We're looking back from what, 14 billion years?
Looking forward, you get 6 days.
Yeah.
And looking back, we're getting the 14 billion years or whatever.
Yeah, and it all has to do because the universe is an expanding universe. It's just. I have it on my websites and things that you can see the actual calculation.
Yeah, what is your website? GeraldSchroeder.com.
GeraldSchroeder.com. Yeah. It's and there's an essay on there called "The Age of the." It's in my second book, "The Science of God," which is a few chapters on that. But on the website, there's a summary in about 5 pages. It's called in one of the articles is called "The Age of the Universe," and it leads you literally by the nose, actually.
That's great. You're doing a lot of justice for this. You've also given a lecture on the proof of God from science in a few minutes, and has millions of views.
Oh,
correct?
But we had no idea. We shot that without a script. Proof of God in 5 minutes. And the graphics are great. I didn't do the graphics. I don't know how to do graphics. But it makes it more than a speaking head. The graphics are great. Well, just a history of that. We had no idea it would have any impact, so we wanted to make it short. So no script, shot it first, 7 minutes, too long. Shot it the second time, 6 minutes, too long. The third time was 5 minutes and 28 seconds. We can go to 5 minutes. So yeah, proof of God in 5 minutes. It's amazing, and it uses only NASA data. There are no Bible data used. It's totally NASA, except the very last sentences.
And you basically showed that there has to be some intelligence, divine intelligence, that structured this whole thing. This is not the product of random series of events that led to this. This is a very calculated creation. Everything is very precise, correct?
The universe. Even seculars say the universe knows we're given. Now, if you take like Scientific American, a very, very materialist journal, okay? It's not interested in all its articles are totally non-spiritual. They're metaphysical, and not metaphysical. They're dealing with science, and they make a statement that the strongest evidence that there are other universes with other laws of nature. Because our universe is so perfect for life. This is a secular science journal. Our universe is so perfect for life that there's no way you could get that on one roll of the cosmic dice. There must be gazillions of other universes, each with its own laws of nature, and one of them is going to be a winner. Obviously, we're in the winner, because if we weren't the winner, we wouldn't be here. The logic, it's embarrassing that the best piece of information for multiple universes, our universe is perfect. But what is interesting is this journal essentially has said, if we're the only universe, we're a designer universe. Every scientist with whom I speak, whether they're observant, they believe in faith in God, etc., or completely secular, say the universe knew we were coming. This universe is made for life. It doesn't prove there's a God. If there's a gazillion other universes, I don't think any of them actually prove there's a God. But I think when you add the data together, coincidence becomes a problem. Right. Coincidence at the British Museum should date the change in society that the Bible predicts occurred.
Right. So they're saying today it's not possible to be an atheist today. Maybe you could say, prove God, I'll wait until you prove him. Yeah. That's one thing. But to say I'm an atheist, I don't believe in an intellectual design, that's an impossibility today. You'd have to be a non-intelligent person, basically, not to be up to speed with what we've understood.
Yeah, so you could be an agnostic.
Not to offend anyone, yes, an agnostic.
Agnostic, I'd like to see more proof, etc., but... Yeah,
as long as you're a good human, and not violating the laws of nature, you can, we're not trying to force everyone to believe in God, but certainly we're presenting something here which is validating thousands of years of a tradition of information that's come forth.
Yes, and I think what I find interesting, because I take now from the Bible point of view, and putting my science not aside but keeping in perspective, the Bible has a great track record of being correct. Like quantum physics has a great track record for about 50, 60 years of being correct. The Bible has a real track record. It predicts certain things will happen. That's thousands of years ago. Mm-hmm. Things have happened.
Right. So now we're predicting, speaking of predictions, and back to the reason why we're here, we've predicted that there would be two different waves of an exile. This Judean exile, which we call the quote-unquote the Jews, and the exile of the greater house of Israel. And in the future, the Judeans return first, then the greater house of Israel starts to return. You know, that's like throwing up, they call in English a Hail Mary pass, you know, a touchdown pass from one end of the football field to the other. Yeah. And, you know, we've waited for thousands of years. Is this going to happen? And all of a sudden we see, yes, there's a return to Israel by these people who are from the Judean exile. And now all of a sudden there's hundreds of millions of people around the world saying, hey, we were the descendants of the northern kingdom of Israel, who was lost well before the Judeans went into exile, and we would like to come back now. This is basically according to the playbook. This is exactly what should be happening. Now that it's happening, and you know, with what you're saying with science, we are sitting, the Torah, or our narrative, is an intimate doctrine. It sums up everything. It's the expression of the creator of the universe in a text, basically, so to say. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think what the science has done for the earlier parts, before the exiles, they say, just like Genesis, etc., is it lets us see that the Torah has a track record of being correct. And now we have this, so it makes statements about the exile. Mm-hmm. So it's probably correct about that. You know, if you have a system that gives you correct answers all along, then you have to see a new one. You haven't quite proven it yet. But this, you know, the line does lead to it's probably correct also.
Cool. So based on all of this, I can assume that we're going to inherit world peace soon?
Levi. That's our job. You know, Moses, the God, and coming out of Egypt, and the sea is stopping us, and Moses says to the people, stand still and watch God fight for you. God sets and here's a man that spoke with God directly. We just hope we can prayers maybe. And Moses says, stand still. What does God say? No, Moses, you got it wrong. Tell the people to go forward. You know, in other words, if there's going to be world peace, I think Rabbi Shlomo Riskin says it so well. Many have said it. You should pray as if everything counts on God, but act as if everything counts on you. Mm-hmm. The burden's on us to bring world peace. God will give the format, but we have to bring it.
Right. I read once that God doesn't bless humans; He blesses their handiwork, what they do with their hands.
Ah, beautiful.
So we have to actually be a partner in this creation. Is that correct?
We are partners with God. That's my fourth book, God and Heard to God. We're partners. God has. You read the Bible. We are partners with God, mm-hmm. and the work that you're doing in finding this searching out these I say lost tribes. Everyone, whatever term you want to use, is partnering with God to bring back, to show the reality that exists in this world.
That was very well said. I appreciate it. It goes to my heart.
No.
On that note, before we conclude the interview, I'd like to just say which books you've written, in case anyone would like to read them. You've written, actually we have them over here if you don't mind. I'm just going to reach and get them. We have Genesis and the Big Bang, and your newest book, God According to God, which you just write out the axioms of truth from the Torah about how God, you know, relates, describes himself. Here are these books. You have The Hidden Face of God, and you have The Science of God as well.
You know, The Science of God was the one that gives the age of the universe and also Adam, etc.
On that note, it was definitely an honor. We're going to officially close this.
It's my honor. Yeah. But
it's all teamwork, that's what we say.